Do you hear me? The voice seemed to come from a deep place, yet as real as the very air I breathed. I hesitated, my heart racing, unsure if it was my mind playing tricks on me or if, finally, that ancient call was finding an echo within me. I've always been here, God replied softly, like a whisper that cuts through internal storms. It was at that moment that I realized how much I had let my soul dry up, suffocated by noise and doubt. Why do I feel so lost, even though I'm surrounded by people and answers? I asked, my voice almost breaking. Because you have listened to the world, but not to me. His presence was not imposing, but it demanded my full attention. John 10:27 I once said, "My sheep hear my voice, I know them and they follow me." But how often have you really stopped to listen? How many times has your heart opened to what I want to whisper? That conversation felt like it had no beginning, because in truth, there had never been a moment when I hadn't tried to talk to you. But now, truly, was the moment to relinquish control, to silence the inner voices that doubt, that fear, that cling to old wounds. What if I can't? The fear was almost tangible, like a shadow that refused to budge. It is precisely in your din that I enter. When you admit your limitations, I manifest myself with power. It does not take a perfect heart to receive me, only a willing heart. The promise was there, clear, even in the midst of my failures. But what does it really mean to make room for this spirit that calls so gently? It's not a one-time act. It's an ongoing decision, an invitation that needs to be renewed every morning, every moment of doubt and distress. But what about the times when I feel unworthy, that my baggage seems too heavy to leave behind? My voice trembled, the confession rising from deep within my chest. I know every part of you, your flaws, your fears, and even your darkest secrets. There is no condemnation where I dwell, only love and redemption. Let me in, even if the doors are jammed shut by pride or pain. The patience in his tone made me feel welcomed for the first time in a long time. In that dialogue, a deep concern emerged. What if I had lived much of my journey without realizing that my true companion was always by my side, waiting to guide me? And what's more, what if this openness wasn't just to receive, but to allow myself to be transformed from the inside out? Transforming. That hurts, doesn't it? I ventured. Growing always brings discomfort. The old must fall for the new to be born. The spirit is not a passing visitor. It wants to live within you, rebuild every room of your being. And this doesn't happen without struggle, without tears, without silence. Silence. I understood that perhaps this was what was missing, learning to be silent, to let go of the incessant noise of the mind, to listen to the voice that whispers hope. I'm tired of running away, of pretending everything is okay. I want this silence. I want you. Then receive me. Allow the spirit to invade the forgotten corners, heal what is broken, and rekindle the light that seems to have gone out. And that was a promise that moved me more than any words I had ever heard. But one final question lingered. Would I be prepared to let this subtle yet powerful presence begin to guide my steps? Or would I continue to live in the illusory security of the known, even if it left me empty? If the answer is yes, then the true path begins now. Because listening is the first step, and opening your heart is the act of courage that changes everything. Are you ready for this? So you opened the door, God began, as if he had been waiting for this moment forever. But do you know what happens when someone truly lets me in? My chest tightened. The truth was, even though I'd said yes, a part of me cringed in fear of the unknown that came with it. What does it really mean to let you in? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. It's more than a presence. It's an internal earthquake, a silent revolution that dismantles what you've built with so much effort to protect yourself. He spoke tenderly but firmly. The spirit I send does not come to keep you in place, but to provoke, transform, and reconstitute you. And I asked myself, am I ready for this creative destruction? To let the old me be deconstructed, the masks fall, and the old wounds pulse again to be healed? But what if I don't want this change? I asked fearfully. What if the safety of my comfort zone is still more appealing than the chaos of transformation? Change always brings resistance. You call it chaos, but I see it as the gateway to freedom. God didn't seem to judge me, just waiting for me to see beyond the fear. You can try to ignore it, postpone it, or deny it, but the seed has already been planted in your heart. It will grow, one way or another. I remembered then how many times I'd felt this deep restlessness, like a fire that wouldn't go out, even when I tried to smother it with distractions. It was as if something inside me was crying out for a new life, a reconnection with what truly matters. "You speak of reconnection," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "But how can I find something I don't even know where it is? How can I recognize my true voice when so many others scream within me? The voice I give is subtle. It doesn't shout because it doesn't need to. It persists. Even when everything around you seems deafening, you must learn to listen in the silence, to feel in the emptiness, to perceive the movement of the spirit in every small detail." Suddenly, a thought came to me. Perhaps the greatest challenge is trusting not only you, but myself to get through this journey. Doubt still wanted to cling tightly, because trusting means giving up control, and control was what I knew how to do. "Trust is the key that opens the heart," God continued. "But this key isn't given all at once. It's built day by day, step by step, with small decisions of surrender. And what happens when I fail? When doubt overwhelms me, anxiety tried to take over the conversation. Then I will be there, not to point out your mistakes, but to extend a hand and lift you up, because the journey is not lonely. I am the constant presence in your inner struggle." I felt a tear escape, a mixture of relief and fear, because it was the first time I had heard about a love that doesn't require perfection, just desire. But still, a doubt lingered. If this journey demands courage, dedication, and reconstruction, what is the real price of resistance? How many more days will I waste trying to live in the middle ground, in a comfortable lie? "Resisting doesn't protect you," he said. "It only postpones the inevitable, and the pain you're running from now may be greater when you least expect it." I wanted to believe there was a different way, but my fear seemed stronger than hope. "I'm not alone in this, am I?" I asked, almost begging for reassurance. "It never was and never will be. I am your refuge and your strength, but you must take the first step without seeing the whole path. Faith is the courage of the invisible." And in that moment, the silence that had once been frightening now felt like an invitation, a space where something new could be born. "But God, how do I know this voice is really yours? How do I differentiate what comes from the Spirit and what is just my mind trying to deceive itself?" The answer came not as a definition, but as an invitation to experiment. True Spirit creates peace in chaos, clarity in confusion, love where there was fear. It does not oppress, it does not manipulate, it liberates. Pay attention to this, and you will begin to recognize the difference. But the question that stuck in my soul, the biggest of all, still needed to be answered. If all of this is real, if this transformation is possible, why do we so often feel that God is distant, silent, absent? This is the mystery we will unravel together. Because sometimes God is silent so that you can learn to hear the silence and recognize that, even in the silence, He is at work. Are you ready to understand what God's silence really means? Or will you continue to seek answers only in the noise? The next stage of this conversation will reveal what happens when we learn to trust the invisible, to dive into the unknown, and to transform silence into living presence. Do you want to continue with me? Have you ever felt that God is silent, but that, paradoxically, silence is screaming within you? God asked, and in that instant, I felt a flame ignite, restless and urgent. Silence is not absence. It is presence in its purest form. It is the space where everything transforms. I remained silent, trying to process it. How do I transform emptiness into strength, absence into movement? But why does silence hurt so much? I asked, my voice thick with an ancient anguish, the kind that haunts me on the darkest nights. Because silence challenges your need for control, he replied, with a calm that seemed to transcend time. In silence, you can't escape yourself. You can't hide the wounds, the doubts, the buried desires. Silence lays your soul bare, and that's frightening. Startled, I asked him, "So it is precisely in this silence that I will have to confront my greatest fears? The ones I have always avoided? The ones that made me build walls and walls?" "Exactly," he said. "But don't think you'll be alone on this journey. I'll be by your side, not to take away the pain, but to show you that it's also a path, that it's the seed of your healing." I felt the pressure of my own heart, as if I were facing an abyss. What if I fall into that abyss? What if the pain is unbearable? "Falling isn't the end," he said firmly. "Falling is part of learning. What matters isn't avoiding the fall, but getting up with a renewed perspective. You're not alone in falling, nor are you alone in rising." There was a time when I thought the journey would be linear, that it would have clear, comfortable answers. But God revealed to me that life is not a straight line. but rather a complex dance between light and shadow, certainty and doubt, courage and fear. Why can light only exist because there is shadow? I asked, trying to understand this duality that confuses me so much. Because the shadow is the space where the unknown lives, where the deepest wounds reside. And that's where the light must penetrate for true transformation to occur. If you run from the shadow, the light will never reach your heart. This conversation brought me another concern. What if the shadow inside me is greater than the light I imagine I have? Then the light must be greater, he said, with the certainty that only infinity can possess. But this light is not born of your strength, but of surrender. True surrender, the kind that happens when you admit that you cannot carry everything alone. And I asked myself, can I surrender without resistance? Is my soul ready for this surrender, as feared as it is necessary? You will often want to give up, God warned, because the process of transformation is slow and arduous. But it is in persistence that the soul finds its true power. And what happens when I make a mistake? When I feel more lost than ever? I asked, vulnerability giving way. Error is a teacher in disguise. It points out paths that are not yet yours. Don't be afraid of making mistakes. Don't be afraid of not trying. Amidst this whirlwind of thoughts, a strange sensation enveloped me. Hope and fear intertwined in a silent dance. Hope pulled me forward, fear backward. How do we balance these forces? I whispered. Finding your center, God replied. The stillness where neither hope nor fear dominate, but where your essence, your truth, can finally emerge. And it was in this stillness that I realized the greatest paradox. The silence that frightens me is also the birthplace of my true voice. So what should I do now? I asked, feeling the urgency of the answer. Keep listening, he said. Not just with your ears, but with your heart. The next part of your journey will reveal how silence can be your greatest ally, not your enemy. But am I ready for this alliance? To transform the silence of fear into the silence of power? The next step will require more than courage. It will require faith that transcends understanding. Want to discover how to transform silence into strength and walk towards your true essence? Then come with me. Have you ever imagined that the thing you fear most could be the gateway to your greatest transformation? God began, and his words landed like a challenge in my chest. Fear, that shadow that had haunted me for so long, now seemed less like a barrier and more like a key. But could I accept it? So, my greatest fear could be the gateway to my freedom? I asked, feeling a mixture of disbelief and hope, as if I were standing on the edge of a cliff staring into the unknown. Exactly, he replied, his voice firm and gentle at the same time. Fear exists to reveal what you haven't yet understood. It's a guardian that protects what's sacred, what's to come. Don't run away from it. Learn to dialogue with it. I thought about that fear that paralyzes me, that makes me retreat from my truest dreams. Why resist fear if it's a messenger? How do I communicate with something that's destroying me from within? You begin by recognizing that fear is not the enemy, he explained, but an aspect of yourself that seeks attention and healing. When you stop to listen, to understand what it wants to show you, fear loses its power to paralyze and becomes a force that drives you forward. What if fear reveals something I don't want to see? Something that could destroy everything I've built? I asked, a chill running down my spine. Truth has this power, God said. It can destroy fragile structures so that the new can be born. Are you prepared to allow this creative destruction? The thought of losing control, of seeing my certainties crumble, left me vulnerable. But how can I trust a process that can seem so painful? How can I embrace chaos without losing hope? Because chaos is the matrix of creation, he replied with infinite patience. In disorder, possibilities arise. It is in inner conflict that the soul finds its most authentic voice. That's when I realized my resistance was an attempt to maintain the illusion of security, of stability. I'm trapped in my certainties because I fear the unknown. But isn't this security a golden prison? Exactly, he agreed. The comfort zone is a self-built cell. Only the courage to throw yourself into the abyss will allow you to discover the vastness of your being. That conversation led me to a deep reflection. How many times have I allowed myself to be guided by fear disguised as prudence? How many opportunities have I missed out on because I was afraid to take risks? What if I fail in this surrender? What if my abyss reveals not vastness but emptiness? I asked, my heart aching. Failure is just a version of the truth that hasn't reached you yet, God replied. It's a necessary lesson for your spirit to grow stronger. Without falls, there is no ascension. I began to see that my journey would not be about avoiding suffering, but about learning to dance with it, embrace its lessons, and grow through it. But how do you know when it's time to fight and when it's time to give in? I asked, sensing the complexity of that internal game. This is the art of wisdom, he said. Wisdom is born of experience, of attentive listening to the heart. Sometimes struggle is necessary to break through barriers. Other times giving in is the path to finding peace. And how can I avoid losing myself in this balance? I begged, aware of the challenge. Trust your center, God replied. It exists within you, a point of balance where all forces harmonize. Finding it is your mission, and it will be the beacon that will guide your steps. A comfortable silence fell, as if the universe itself awaited my answer. I knew I was facing a crucial choice: remain in the comfort of certainty or embrace the chaos of transformation. So, what awaits me on the next step of this journey? I asked, a mixture of fear and curiosity driving me. You will discover how true power is born from vulnerability, he revealed, with a promise that made my chest flutter, and how that strength can transform not just you, but everything around you. Am I ready to find my power in surrender? Or will I still take refuge in the illusion of superficial strength? The next step will reveal the secret of vulnerability and the invisible strength it carries. Are you ready to see what few dare? Come with me, because this journey is just beginning. Ask ChatGPT. Did you know that the greatest strength a man can wield lies not in his clenched fist, but in his ability to show himself fragile? God spoke, his voice shattering the silence like lightning ripping through the night. I stood still, the weight of the revelation nearly knocking me over. How could weakness be true power? But Lord, how is this possible? I've always been taught that strength is resilience, that showing vulnerability is a sign of weakness, I replied, feeling the confusion rise within me like a raging sea. I grew up in a world where those who don't hide their pain are condemned, precisely for this reason, he said, softening his tone. Because you lived in this world, you carry deep scars. But this wound, when revealed, becomes a source of light, not darkness. It is in surrender that man finds his greatest armor. I found myself caught between the need to protect my wounds and the desire to release them so they could heal. But what does surrender mean? Isn't it giving up? No, he corrected firmly. Surrendering is recognizing who you are, accepting your limitations, and still moving forward with courage. It is an act of supreme strength, because only the truly courageous can bear themselves before life and themselves. So I have to shed my pride, my mask of invincibility, I asked, my throat dry, already feeling the weight of the words. Exactly, he replied. Pride is a golden prison that prevents man from experiencing the fullness of being. But when pride falls, what remains is pure essence, a connection to the deepest truth. For an instant, an ancient fear surfaced. What if, stripped of pride, I become insignificant, invisible? How can I show myself so vulnerable without being crushed by the world? Because true vulnerability isn't exposure to the world, God said. It's exposure to yourself. It's an honest dialogue with your own soul. And when you become your own best friend, the world can't bring you down. I found myself reflecting on how many times I've built walls, constructed invisible defenses to hide who I truly am. How many nights I've felt alone, even surrounded by people. Could the loneliness I feel stem from this fear of showing myself? How can I free myself from this loneliness that paralyzes me? I asked, feeling my heart tighten. Start by looking within without judgment, he said. Accept your shadows as part of your being. Only then will loneliness transform into solitude, a sacred space of encounter with yourself. What if I fear what I find in this encounter? What if what I find is emptiness? My voice cracked, trembling. Emptiness is just a space that hasn't been filled yet, he replied tenderly. A blank canvas for you to create whatever you choose. The fear of emptiness is the fear of freedom. Are you ready to embrace that freedom? The words penetrated deeply, bringing light and fear in an almost painful mixture. The responsibility of freedom seemed too heavy a burden for my weary shoulders. But what if I fail to embrace this freedom? What if I lose myself in the immensity of my own being? I asked, doubt consuming me. You will never be lost, he stated, because the journey of being is circular. Losing yourself is part of the path to finding yourself again. Every fall, every doubt, is a seed that germinates into wisdom. For a moment I imagined the vastness of this cycle. Fall, rise, fall again, each turn bringing new understanding. How can I trust this endless cycle without going mad? Trust is born of surrender, he replied, as if revealing an ancient secret. Surrender to the flow of life, without resistance, without trying to control the uncontrollable. That is the key to finding peace. I remained silent, absorbing the intensity of that teaching. If peace is not the absence of conflict, but surrender to the flow, then I needed to learn to dance with chaos. And how do I begin this dance? I asked, almost begging. Start by allowing yourself to feel, God said. All the emotions, all the nuances of your existence. Don't run away from suffering or joy. They are the colors that paint the canvas of your soul. The idea of embracing everything without discrimination seemed daunting, yet liberating. What happens when the colors are too dark, when the pain threatens to consume you? So you call on me, he replied with a promise. And remember, you've never been alone. I am the invisible presence that sustains your journey, even when everything seems to fall apart. That moment was a turning point. I realized that the strength I sought was not outside but within, in that delicate balance between light and shadow, courage and vulnerability. And in the end, what remains? I asked. There remains the man who is not afraid to be whole, he replied. The man who embraces his being in all its complexity and walks with an open heart. I knew this journey wasn't over yet. Many questions still lingered, many challenges awaited me. But now, hope burned brightly in my chest. And what comes next? I asked, my voice thick with anticipation. The final stage of your transformation, he said, the promise echoing in the silence. Where what seemed impossible becomes reality, and man becomes at last free. Am I ready for this final passage? Or do I still hesitate before the unknown that calls me? The next part will reveal what it takes to cross the final door, the one that separates fear from complete freedom. Are you ready to cross? Are you prepared for what many fear but few truly desire? God's voice reverberated within me, a summons that seemed to transcend time and flesh. This is the time to strip yourself not only of fear, but of the last ties that still bind you. My heart raced, not with fear but with urgency. How many times have I thought about breaking free, and how many times have I backed out? How can I be sure I'm ready? I asked, doubt squeezing my chest like an invisible fist. Ready is not the absence of fear, God replied. It is acting in spite of it. Courage is not born from the absence of fear, but from the conscious decision to walk even when fear is there, latent, whispering to you to give up. The silence hung heavy, as if the whole world awaited my answer. I wanted to shout that yes, I was ready, but the truth was I still felt a lump in my throat, an old hesitation that had always been with me. What if I fail? My voice was almost a whisper filled with insecurity. Failure is not the end, he assured me with infinite calm. It's part of the process. Failure is the teacher who teaches you to rise with greater wisdom. The man who fears failure imprisons himself in an invisible cell. I looked inward, searching for courage. With each fall, I had learned something, even if only after time. But what if I still can't do it? Then you will try again, he replied, because the human soul is tireless, and the search for freedom is eternal. The idea of perseverance gave me a spark of hope, but also the inevitable question, what does it really mean to be free? Freedom isn't just the absence of chains, God continued. It's living in harmony with your inner truth, letting go of what no longer serves you, even if it hurts. It's allowing life to transform you from the inside out. What if this transformation is too painful? I asked, remembering the nights when crying seemed like the only refuge. Pain is the fire that purifies, he said, and fire burns, but it also refines. Without fire, gold never shines. The weight of the pain I was trying to avoid then revealed itself to be a necessary passage. But how can I remain steadfast when everything inside me screams for me to give up? Remember, God spoke with almost human tenderness, you are not alone. Within you dwells a divine spark that never goes out. It is this light that illuminates even the darkest paths. I felt this light, still weak, but persistent. It was the hope that sustained me, even in the internal storms. And what happens when I finally surrender to that light? I asked, feeling the anticipation growing. You become whole, he replied, an awakened soul that embraces its shadow and its light. that loves without fear and lives without chains. For a moment I imagined the weight I would leave behind, the fear, the pride, the need for control, everything dissolving into absolute freedom. But does freedom come at a price? I asked, fearing the hidden cost of this transformation. Yes, he confirmed. The price is the courage to reinvent yourself every day, to face your own demons without running away, to love deeply, even when it hurts. What if I'm not willing to pay that price? My voice trembled, almost in despair. Then you will remain a prisoner, he said, not of external chains, but of the prison you have built in your own heart. At that moment, I understood that the real prison was not outside, but within me, that the freedom I sought was an encounter with